Dr. Mund, we'd like to speak with you regarding payments made to Strategic Educational Outcomes Group.
That's one of the consulting firms supporting our grant programs.
Dr. Felicia Mund operated without oversight for 8 years as the superintendent of Havencrest School District in Utah. 11,500 students depended on her. Not one person checked.
What's the concern?
We're reviewing documentation connected to those consulting contracts.
I'll answer what I can, but I'd like to understand exactly what records you're reviewing.
She would not get the chance to explain. Within 72 hours, federal agents would seize her district laptop, her personal laptop, 2 desktop towers from her home office, and the LLC paperwork for a consulting firm that had received $3.1 million and produced exactly nothing in return. 8 years as superintendent, 11,500 students, 14 schools, 1 shell company registered to a UPS store mailbox, 5 years of invoices for work that was never done. Pop quiz. How many people sit on a school board in your hometown, and how many of them have ever actually read a consulting invoice line by line? Drop your guess in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't yet. These are the cases mainstream news will not touch, and we break down exactly how the money disappeared every single week. Felicia Ann Mund was born in 1967 in Tooele, Utah, a copper mining town 40 minutes west of Salt Lake City. Her father, Carl Mund, was a foreman at the Kennecott smelter. Her mother, Joyce, taught 3rd grade at Tooele Elementary for 31 years. Felicia grew up watching her mother grade spelling tests at the kitchen table after dinner, red pen in hand, the only sound the scratch of paper and the hum of the refrigerator. She would later tell a profile in the Utah Education Association magazine that she could not remember a single childhood evening when her mother was not working. She graduated from Tooele High School in 1985, valedictorian of a class of 183. She enrolled at Utah State University in Logan that fall on a partial academic scholarship, majoring in elementary education with a minor in English. She paid the balance of her tuition by working the front desk at the Logan Public Library, $12 per shift, 4 shifts a week. Colleagues from those years described her as serious, almost severe in her work ethic, the kind of student who would not leave a closing shift until every returned book had been reshelved. She graduated with honors in 1989. Her first teaching position was at Granite Park Junior High in South Salt Lake. 6th grade language arts, 28 students per class, a starting salary of $19,400. Her first principal evaluation called her exceptionally organized, with a presence in the classroom that commanded attention without raising her voice. She earned her master's degree in educational leadership from the University of Utah in 1994, taking night classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 3 years while teaching full-time. She made assistant principal at 32, principal at 36, assistant superintendent of curriculum at 41. Along the way, she earned her doctorate in education administration from Brigham Young University, defending her dissertation on equity frameworks in rural Utah school funding in 2009. Colleagues described her in interviews as indefatigable, the smartest person in any room she walked into, and someone who genuinely cared about kids. The phrases came up over and over. They would later appear in her sentencing memorandum, attached as character references by the same colleagues in the same words. In 2016, after a national search that drew 47 applicants, the Havencrest Unified School Board voted 7-0 to appoint Dr. Felicia Mund as superintendent. Her starting salary was $192,000 per year. She moved into a 4-bedroom colonial on Aspen Ridge Drive with her husband, Stephen, an actuary with State Farm, and their 2 college-age children. The local paper ran a feature with a photograph of her on the steps of district headquarters, smiling, her doctoral hood draped over one arm. The headline read, "A lifelong educator comes home." The first 3 years were, by every measurable account, exemplary. Test scores rose. Graduation rates climbed from 81% to 87%. She secured 2 competitive state grants worth a combined $4.3 million, both for school improvement initiatives in the district's 2 lowest performing elementary schools. She was named Utah Superintendent of the Year in 2018. She knew the system. She had spent 30 years learning it. She knew exactly where every dollar flowed, who signed off, who reviewed, and who simply waved through whatever the superintendent's office sent forward. She knew where the gaps were. The Havencrest Unified School District operated on an annual budget of $148 million. Most of that money, roughly 72%, came from state per-pupil funding, tied to enrollment counts taken twice a year. The remainder was a layered mix of local property tax revenue, federal Title I funds for low-income schools, federal IDEA funds for special education, and a rotating portfolio of competitive grants the district pursued each cycle. It was the competitive grants where the system bent, federal title. A supplemental funding, when awarded in larger blocks for specific improvement initiatives, came with reporting requirements but flexible spending categories. State school improvement grants under Utah's Targeted School Improvement Program operated similarly. Each grant required the district to certify, through superintendent-level signature, that expenditures were properly aligned with grant purposes. That certification was treated, in practice, as definitive. The grant agencies did not send auditors into individual districts to verify line items. They reviewed the certifications, sampled documentation when something looked unusual, and trusted that a superintendent who had attached her signature and her professional reputation to a quarterly report had told them the truth. The school board, for its part, operated the way most American school boards operate. 7 elected members, none of them educators by profession, all of them with day jobs, meeting twice a month for 3 hours at a time. They reviewed financial reports prepared by the district business office. They approved vendor contracts in bulk on consent agendas. They asked questions about specific items only when something jumped out. A controversial textbook adoption, a parent complaint, a teacher pay dispute. A line item for consulting services, strategic planning, $187,500, did not jump out. It looked like every other consulting line item on every other school district budget in America. The district business office had 3 full-time accountants and a chief financial officer. They processed roughly 11,000 vendor payments per year. They verified that invoices matched purchase orders. They verified that purchase orders matched approved budget categories. They verified that the signature authorizing the payment was the signature of someone with authority to authorize it. They did not verify, because it was not their job to verify, whether the underlying work had actually been performed. That was the superintendent's job. That trust, the structural assumption that the person at the top would not lie about whether the work existed, was the entire load-bearing wall of the system. It was about to come down. The shell company was incorporated on March 11, 2019. Strategic Educational Outcomes Group, LLC, was registered with the Utah Division of Corporations through a registered agent service in Draper called Beehive Business Filings. The filing fee was $70. The registered agent's address, where any official mail for SEOG would be received, was a private mailbox at a UPS store in a strip mall on State Street. The articles of organization listed a single member manager, whose name was not Felicia Mund. The name belonged to a woman who had died in 2013. Mund had pulled it from an obituary in the Deseret News. She obtained an employer identification number from the IRS through the agency's online application portal, using the deceased woman's social security number, which she had pulled from a publicly available genealogy database that had archived the federal death master file before access restrictions tightened. She drafted an operating agreement using a template she had downloaded from a small business legal website. She paid the registered agent service $249 per year to forward any official mail to a P.O. box she had opened in Sandy under her own name. The bank account was opened the following week at a Mountain America Credit Union branch in Sandy. Mund provided the LLC documents, the EIN, and a driver's license she had altered with the deceased woman's name and her own photograph. The teller did not look twice. The account was authorized to receive electronic transfers from any source. SEOG sent its first invoice to the Havencrest Unified School District on April 22, 2019. The invoice was for $46,000, billed against the district's federal Title I improvement allocation. The line items read, Strategic Planning Consultation, 60 hours at $500 per hour. Curriculum Alignment Assessment, $16,000 flat fee. The invoice was processed by the district business office on April 29th. The payment cleared SEOG's bank account on May 2nd. By May 5th, Mund had transferred $38,000 of those dollars to a personal account at Wells Fargo that she held jointly with no one. She used the first transfer to put a down payment on a 2019 Range Rover Velar, $42,700. The remaining balance she financed through Range Rover Capital. She listed the vehicle in her own name at her home address. She drove it to school board meetings. The second SEOG invoice followed in July, $62,000. The third in September, $71,000. By December of 2019, SEOG had invoiced the district for approximately $248,000 in consulting services. Moon signed each authorization herself. In 2020, she escalated. That spring, Havencrest won a federal pandemic recovery grant worth $2.1 million, intended to accelerate learning recovery in elementary schools. Munn certified in her grant application that the district would engage outside consultants to design and implement targeted intervention curricula. SEOG was the consultant. SEOG invoiced the district for $462,000 across the 2020 fiscal year. No consultant ever set foot in a Havencrest classroom. No SEOG employee ever existed. There were no employees. There was no office. There was no work. The deliverables, when the business office occasionally asked, were brief executive summaries that Mund herself drafted on her district laptop late at night. 2-page documents with bullet-pointed recommendations. PowerPoint decks with stock imagery. Quarterly progress memos that referenced ongoing consultation with district leadership without naming a single consultant. They looked, at a glance, like the kind of deliverables that real consulting firms occasionally produced. No one read them carefully. Why would they? They were attached to invoices that had already been paid. Across 2021, SEOG invoiced for $814,000. Across 2022, $943,000. Across 2023, $691,000. Each year the invoices grew larger, because each year Mun's confidence grew larger. The system had not flinched the first year. It had not flinched the second. It had not flinched at $50,000, or $200,000, or $600,000. She bought a second home in Park City for $684,000 in cash. She put it in a trust she had set up under her husband's late mother's maiden name. She purchased a 2022 Audi Q7 for her daughter as a graduation present. She paid off the mortgage on the Aspen Ridge Drive house. She funded a private equity investment account with $600,000. The signs were there if anyone had looked. A superintendent making $192,000 a year does not pay cash for a second home. A husband who is a regional actuary does not buy his daughter a $60,000 SUV without financing. But no one in Havencrest had a reason to look at Felicia Moon's tax returns, and no one at the district had a reason to compare her lifestyle to her salary. She had built a closed loop. She certified the grants. She approved the vendor. She drafted the deliverables. She signed the payment authorizations. She was every step of the chain that was supposed to have multiple steps in it. No one noticed. No one checked. The catalyst was not a whistleblower. It was not a disgruntled employee. It was not an angry parent, or a curious reporter, or a vigilant board member. It was a spreadsheet. In February of 2024, the Utah State Auditor's Office launched what it called the Multi-District Federal Expenditure Review Initiative, a cross-district pattern detection project funded by a Federal Grant Administration Improvement Program. The goal was straightforward. Pull every federal grant expenditure across all 41 Utah school districts for the prior 5 fiscal years. Sort by vendor. Look for outliers. A junior analyst in the state auditor's office, 26 years old, 2 years out of a master's program in public administration at the University of Utah, was assigned to the consulting services category. Her name was Maren Whitlock. She built a simple pivot table. She sorted by total payments per vendor across the 5-year window. Strategic Educational Outcomes Group LLC appeared exactly once on the spreadsheet, and only in Havencrest's district. No other Utah district had paid them $1. Their total receipts from Havencrest across the period were $3.1 million. Whitlock checked the standard educational consulting industry registries. She checked the Council of Chief State School Officers vendor database. She checked the National Association of School Superintendents preferred provider list. She checked LinkedIn. She checked the Utah Division of Corporations. SEOG had a registered agent address at a UPS store. SEOG had no website. SEOG had no employees on any professional networking platform. SEOG had no published case studies. SEOG had no documented engagement with any other school district in the United States. SEOG had been paid $3.1 million by a single school district for educational consulting services that left no public trace anywhere on the internet. Whitlock flagged the entry for her supervisor on the morning of February 20th, 2024. Her supervisor, a forensic analyst named Doug Reinhardt, who had spent 11 years investigating financial irregularities in Utah municipal government, looked at the spreadsheet for 90 seconds. "That's a shell company," he said. The state auditor's office obtained a subpoena for SEOG's bank records 2 days later. Mountain America Credit Union complied within 72 hours. The bank statements showed 5 years of deposits from Havencrest Unified School District, totaling exactly the amount the spreadsheet had flagged. The bank statements showed 5 years of outflows: real estate purchases, vehicle purchases, personal credit card payments, transfers to personal accounts. The personal accounts belonged to Dr. Felicia Mund. By the end of February, the state auditor's office had referred the matter to the FBI's Salt Lake City field office. By mid-March, the FBI had opened a formal investigation under joint jurisdiction with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Utah. Mund did not know any of this. She showed up to work every morning at 6:45. She drove the Range Rover. She drank her coffee in her corner office. She approved the district's spring budget revisions. She had no idea. The federal investigation took 4 months. It was, by the standards of public sector embezzlement cases, fast. It was fast because the evidence required no construction. It simply required gathering. FBI Special Agent Daniel Crow was assigned as case agent. He had spent 6 years on the Public Corruption Squad and had built 2 prior superintendent fraud cases in other states. He knew the pattern. He knew where to look. The first step was the documentation request. The Bureau sent a formal preservation letter to Havencrest Unified School District on March 19th, requesting every document related to SEOG: invoices, purchase orders, contracts, scopes of work, deliverables, correspondence, meeting notes, any record of in-person consultation activity. The district business office responded within 10 days. They produced 183 invoices, totaling $3.1 million. They produced 11 brief executive summaries authored, according to the metadata, by Felicia Mund's own district laptop. They produced no contract, no scope of work, no project plan, no time records, no consultant names, no site visits, no meeting minutes, no correspondence with anyone from SEOG. The district produced, in other words, exactly what Mund had given them across 5 years, and nothing more, because nothing more existed. Crow interviewed the chief financial officer first, a woman named Patricia Ling, 15 years with the district. She was cooperative and visibly shaken. She told Crow that she had processed every SEOG invoice on the basis of the superintendent's signed authorization. She had assumed, because she had no reason not to assume, that the work was being done. She had never met anyone from SEOG. She had never seen anyone from SEOG enter the district building. She had assumed they worked remotely. Crow interviewed the school board chair next, a retired construction contractor named Glenn Peterson, 3 terms on the board. He told Crow that the board had approved SEOG's engagement on the basis of the superintendent's recommendation and had renewed the engagement each year on the basis of the superintendent's reports. He had never met anyone from SEOG. He told Crow, with a long pause, that he did not believe he had ever asked who the consultants actually were. Crow interviewed 12 principals, 4 assistant superintendents, the curriculum director, and the district's federal grants compliance officer. Every single one of them gave him the same answer. They had heard the name SEOG. They had seen it referenced in budget documents. They had never, in 5 years, met a single person who worked there. The forensic accounting unit traced SEOG's bank records dollar by dollar: the Range Rover, the Park City house, the Audi Q7, the mortgage payoff, the private equity account, the personal credit card payments at restaurants in Salt Lake City, at boutiques in Park City, at a Mediterranean cruise line. 2.7 million of the 3.1 million in district payments had been spent on assets and lifestyle items directly attributable to Mund. The remaining 400,000 had been moved through a series of personal accounts and CD ladders, all in her name. The altered driver's license used to open the SEOG bank account was found by Crow's team on Mund's home desktop tower in a folder marked Tax Records Backup. The Photoshop file was still saved. The layer with the deceased woman's name was still editable. The grand jury was convened on June 17th. It heard testimony from Maren Whitlock, Doug Reinhardt, Daniel Crow, Patricia Ling, Glenn Peterson, and the forensic accountant. It returned a 41-count indictment on July 9, 2024. Embezzlement of federal funds, wire fraud, money laundering, aggravated identity theft for the use of the deceased woman's name on the LLC filings. Utah state misuse of public funds, referred concurrently. The arrest warrant was issued the same afternoon. The agents arrived at 6:52 on the morning of July 10th. Mund was already in her kitchen, in a charcoal pantsuit, pouring coffee into a travel mug. Stephen was at the table with the Salt Lake Tribune folded open to the sports section. Their 2 dogs, a pair of older Australian shepherds, were sleeping on the rug by the back door. The school year was 3 weeks from starting. The board's first August meeting was on her calendar for the following Tuesday. Special Agent Crow and 3 other agents identified themselves at the front door. They had a federal arrest warrant and a search warrant for the residence, both vehicles, and any electronic devices on the premises. Stephen Mund opened the door. He did not say anything. He turned and looked at his wife. Felicia Mund set the travel mug down on the counter. She walked across the kitchen and into the entryway. She looked at the agents. She looked at her husband. She looked at the agents again. "I need to call my attorney," she said. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for federal charges including embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and aggravated identity theft. You'll have the opportunity to contact counsel after processing. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." There has to be a mistake. There has to be some kind of mistake. "Ma'am, we have the warrant. We have the bank records. We have the LLC filings. We have your driver's license attached to the bank application. Please turn around." Stephen, call Greg. Call Greg right now." "Ma'am, hands behind your back." She turned. The handcuffs closed. Her travel mug was still on the counter, steam rising from the open lid. The dogs had woken up and were standing in the doorway, confused. She did not speak again until she was in the back of the federal vehicle. The last thing she said, to no one in particular, looking out the window as the agents began carrying boxes out of her front door, was 3 words. "This is impossible." It was not impossible. It had been documented in 5 years of bank statements that she had assumed no one would ever pull. We are about to walk into the trial, the verdict, the parents who spoke for their kids, and the judge's full statement at sentencing. If you have stayed with the story this far, you already know this channel covers what local news barely touches. Subscribe before the next case drops. The next one is worse. The trial began on October 28, 2024, in the United States District Court for the District of Utah, the Honorable Judge Annette Ferreira presiding. Mund was represented by Gregory Halverson, a Salt Lake City white-collar defense attorney with a reputation for difficult cases. His strategy was narrow. He did not contest that SEOG had received the payments. He did not contest that Mund controlled SEOG. He argued, instead, that the consulting services had been delivered, that Mund herself had performed substantial advisory work that justified the fees, and that the structure of the engagement, while irregular, did not rise to criminal fraud. The jury did not buy it. They could not buy it. The prosecution's case was built entirely on what did not exist. The government's lead prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney Robin Patel, opened by holding up a single sheet of paper. $3.1 million, she said. This is the entire list of work product produced by Strategic Educational Outcomes Group LLC across 5 years. The defendant herself wrote it. There is nothing else. There is no consulting firm. There is only a bank account and a name on a death certificate and $3.1 million of public school money that bought a Range Rover and a vacation house and not 1 minute of work for a single Havencrest student. The trial lasted 9 days. The jury heard from Maren Whitlock, the analyst who had built the spreadsheet. They heard from Special Agent Crow. They heard from Patricia Ling, who broke down in tears on the stand describing how she had signed the checks. They heard from Glenn Peterson, the school board chair, who said, when asked whether he felt the board had done its due diligence, clearly, we did not. They heard from 3 Havencrest parents, called by the prosecution as victim impact witnesses. The most affecting was a woman named Carla Reyes, whose son had attended the lowest performing of the district's elementary schools, one of the schools the federal pandemic recovery grant had been intended to help. She told the jury that her son had fallen 2 grade levels behind in reading during the pandemic years. She said the school had told her there were not enough resources for additional intervention support. She said she had been told, at a parent meeting in 2021, that the district was working with outside consultants on a learning recovery plan. I sat in that meeting, Reyes told the jury, and I believed them. I believed there were people working on my son's reading. There weren't. There was nobody. There was nothing. My son is in 8th grade now. He still reads at a 4th grade level. That money was supposed to help him. That money helped buy her a car. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 20 minutes. They returned guilty verdicts on all 41 counts. Sentencing was held on January 22, 2025. Judge Ferreira spoke for nearly 15 minutes before pronouncing sentence. The portion that the local press carried in full read this way. Dr. Mund, you held one of the most consequential positions of public trust available in this state. You held it for 8 years. You used your credentials, your reputation, and the structural deference that institutions extend to people with your titles as the instruments of a deception that lasted 5 years and stole from children who needed the help that money was supposed to provide. You did not steal in a moment of weakness. You did not steal under duress. You built a corporate structure